Welcome everyone to today's webinar. I trust you are all safe and well during these challenging times. My name is Martin Ross and I'm the National Head of Transactional Banking at NAB. Our team is in the business for our customers like you to make the world of the complex world of payments simpler. And this is achieved through three key pillars. First of all, cash flow innovation. Secondly, simplified business workflow. And third, greater visibility and control over payments. One of the great ways we support delivery for our customers is through key strategic partnerships. It's my great pleasure today to welcome you to this presentation in conjunction with our expense management partner, Freedom, on our enhanced functionality to Flexipurchase called ePayables. This unique partnership between NAB and Freedom began almost 20 years ago, when we saw a gap in the market for providing suitable expense management tools for our business customers. At this time, we provided our purchasing and corporate cards for customers ranging from small and medium-sized enterprises right up to government, education, and institutional size customers. Regardless of their size, all talk frequently to us of the frustrations of having to manually collect receipts, reconcile against our paper statements, and manually perform reimbursements while still managing risk. In 2018, Freedom was acquired by Visa, one of the largest card issuers in the world and one of NAB's strategic partners. This presentation will be provided by Don Suplis, who's National Channel Manager at Freedom, and will run for approximately 35 minutes. After that presentation, Don will join myself and one of my transactional banking specialists, Mikhail Behrens, who directly supports our government, education and community customers for an interactive question and answer session. One of my other specialists, Tom Hudson, will mediate this, and you can type any questions that you might have during the presentation by just selecting the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. So we'll endeavour to answer as many questions as possible, but if there are any questions left unanswered on the day, we'll collect them and send them to all attendees after this call, together with a copy of Don's presentation. There'll also be an opportunity for you to reach out via our own banking relationship teams, should you have any questions that come up after the presentation, or you wish to actually speak to us about specific things together with your wider management teams. So it gives me great pleasure to hand over to Don for the main insights on this webinar. Over to you, Don.
Thanks, Martin. And thank you to everyone joining us on the call today, especially on a Friday afternoon. So my name's Don Suplis, as Martin mentioned, and I'm here to present to you basically the Flexipurchase enhancements that we've developed over the last couple of years. We're here to show you this just to basically run you through how other organisations have benefited and where we sort of come from in terms of our traditional expense management platform to today offering these enhanced functionalities. So what we're going to go through today is what is Flexipurchase. So basically giving you an understanding of, like I said, where we've been and where we're moving towards. We're going to look at a few sort of different statements that we've reviewed in the market for various industries on why the need. We'll look at some of the common challenges that we see across varied businesses and then look at what the problems are. We'll run through a couple of different use case scenarios as solutions, and then we'll run through a bit of a demonstration on what the actual functionality that I'm going to go through looks like in terms of enhancing what you're currently using today. We'll then look at another piece of the functionality, which is where the virtual card scenario and where these items can be used. As Martin mentioned there, we'll then finish this session with a bit of a Q&A where you've got the opportunity to fire any questions you have at us. So if we look at what is Flexipurchase. So over on the right-hand side there, you can see the expense management portion of Flexipurchase. So traditionally, we have been an offering that goes hand in hand to create an end-to-end solution for NAB's purchasing or corporate cards. Spending on a card can be sort of tiresome in terms of following up, reconciling, capturing receipts, all of these types of things. So Flexipurchase was brought to market as a platform to manage that spend, manage that reconciliation, and give you an opportunity and a need to actually capture receipts and so forth in real time. What we were seeing in the market is there was still a reluctance to issue cards because they have credit limits attached to them. There was card sharing happening across organizations internally and so forth. So what we wanted to do was look at how we could still enable users to access credit, make purchases, but not have to issue them with large credit limits on a card, or not have them sharing a card in an organization and keeping that number for the next time they spend. So we developed two new pieces of the platform, which we call Dynamic Limit Management and Procure to Pay. Now, fundamentally, the process behind these two are exactly the same, and we'll go through that in a bit more detail when we look at the demonstration. But the difference between these two is Dynamic Limit Management is the ability to issue a single piece of plastic to an individual that has a zero balance. So for any given time, that card is not useful. It's sitting in my wallet, has no funds attached to it. What we can do is we can put a pre-approved request through, and once that request is seen and approved, the card is dynamically funded in real time. So this is really good in some of the use cases that we'll run through as we go through the presentation. The second piece that we've come up with is what we call Procure to Pay. Now, again, it's a pre-approval process, but what this enables users to do is in real time, request, approve, and produce a virtual credit card that can be used anywhere card is not needed to be present. Excuse me. So what is the need? So looking over a few different industries, we looked at things like education, and we found out that in 9 out of 10 public schools, 93% of the teachers were using their own money for supplies. 45% of these were spending under $500, and 25 were more than $1,000 per year. If we look at a government survey that was done by the Auditor General's report, we found that only 5 were adequately reviewing their credit card spend. And only 33 of these were collecting and storing the proper tax documents. Again, if we look at education, some more statistics were things like 78% of teachers had to spend their own money to buy stationery for students. 76% were buying classroom equipment for their students, and 44% were for library resources and textbooks. So some of the challenges that we commonly hear when we're speaking with businesses are things like, I'm a volunteer, I've got to spend my own money. Things like, why do I have to constantly borrow someone's card because I'm not issued my own? The business saying things like, we're just not willing, there's a reluctance to issue those credit cards with a credit limit. Again, if we take a look at the teacher example across the education space, why am I always spending my own money? And then finally, both from a user perspective and a business perspective, it'd be great if I had a better way to actually capture receipts rather than having to bundle them up and save them till the end of the month when I finally get issued my statement. So looking at the problem, we see a few common themes. Across all organizations, there's cash being distributed to individuals to make spend, and there's no real ability to track that. We're at the mercy of the user or the individual that we're issuing that cash to actually capture the receipts or bring the receipts back and give a legitimate business reason for what that spend is. We've got a lot of cards within organizations that have quite significant limits. If we look at the health organization, one organization that we were speaking to said that they had 4 cardholders with a $20,000 limit each because they needed to purchase medical supplies on a weekly basis. The other thing is that there's no sort of real way, aside from EFT transfers or cash and check payments, to actually issue funds for infrequent spenders across the business. And then we've also got the issue of sharing cards, which is a huge concern. So a Royal Commission report is likely to have a major recommendation on transparency of spend in aged care health services. They said, Providers need to be clear regarding what services they are providing, how they're providing them, and at what cost. One of the things that we came across when we were putting together all of this information was that in 2008, a regional council in South Australia was publicly outed for having a loose credit card spending policy that amounted to substantial mismanagement of public resources. The Mayor and the CEO spent over $70,000 of ratepayer funded money over 18 months, including a $5,000 spend on a roof climb at Adelaide Oval for a strategic planning day. The issue here is that organisations just don't have a watertight policy in place for issuing cards. So these are the reasons why we developed these products, to assist in actually issuing credit without the need to issue credit cards. So if we look at a couple of use cases here, one of the most common things that we come across are petty cash tins, having to issue different facilities or different parts of our business cash so that they can go and do that sort of ad hoc purchases. What we're seeing dramatically turn in the market is the want to do that, because there is no way to track it. And this is one of the key functionalities of the dynamically funded credit card. The ability to issue a number of individuals in that area a dynamically funded card that they can request funds to be allocated to on a weekly basis. So we issue maybe the head of that particular clinic or department a card, and maybe the second in charge a card as well. They request the funds for their petty cash on a fortnightly basis. And then not only are we capturing the transactions that go against those particular items, we're also enabling them to photograph receipts through a mobile app so that they can actually capture that information as well. This in turn leads to quicker reconciliation and a more sort of stringent process. If we look at the second use case, one of the things that we're seeing more and more, and this isn't just Facebook advertising, it's more online purchases as well, is there's a need for councils, education, different organisations to allocate cards to that. One of the things that we found with one of our big organisations is that they had 26 cards tied to a Facebook advertising account. Now, they noticed some fraudulent transactions going against one of them, and that one card was tied to that account. So in one hit, they had to cancel 26 cards. For the business, the impact to them was they had 26 users that were without a card for potentially a week to 2 weeks. Whilst they ordered new ones, they went through the 100-point ID check and they actually allocated those cards. What they're doing now is they're actually issuing virtual cards as a solution with our Procure to Pay solution, so that if we have, let's say, for example, a 12-month subscription with Facebook advertising, we can simply create a multi-use card that goes against that specific account, and it can't be used for anything else. We can lock down and eliminate any fraudulent transactions going against that. What we can also do is we can create it as a single-use card if need be, as a one-off purchase. The third use case that we looked at was quite a large Melbourne school had a real reluctance to issue cards to individuals. They had people coming into the business that were infrequent users, people that would take school kids on school trips and things like that, or it was just everyday purchases. So what they did internally was they actually created a process in which they had to go to the CFO, they would complete an application form, and once that application form was completed, they'd given justification of why they needed funds, the CFO would actually issue his credit card number to that individual so that they could go and make that purchase. Now, obviously, that is a huge risk to the business. That card in its own had quite a significant limit attached to it. Now, if I've got 20 people, although I have a process in which someone's filled out a piece of paper, I don't know that those 20 people have not taken that number, stored it in their top drawer, and then when they leave the organisation, they take that piece of paper with them. What they're looking at doing now is rolling out virtual cards across the campus. So if an individual needs to make a purchase, they simply put in a request through Flexipurchase. Once the request is approved, they're then provisioned with a single-use virtual card. Again, we've got that tracking ability. So all of the transactions that go against the virtual facility are tracked within Flexipurchase. We can code, we can attach receipts, we can do all of the reconciliation, and we have that audit trail. So what does it actually look like to make a request for one of these cards? So what we thought we would do is run you through a demonstration of that process. So a lot of you are probably familiar with Flexipurchase from an expense portion. So as it looks today, you've no doubt got your expense management platform set up, and you log in and view your daily transactions and so forth, and you have the ability for transactions to flow in on a data feed. Now, with the procure to pay and the dynamically funded cards, it's slightly different because what we're doing is we're actually putting in the request for the funds first, and then when it's approved, we provision that card. So again, what we'll do, as we generally would, is we'll give users a login, but they're just going to have this request function here. They will go into the platform and they're just going to put in a request of what they're requiring the funds for. Now, like I said at the beginning of the call, the process for this is the exact same way it would be for a dynamically funded card or a virtual card. The difference being, obviously, one is for card not present transactions, the other is for the physical piece of plastic that I have in my wallet today. So let's just put in a request. So we're going to look at office supplies. Now, when I'm putting in the request, if I've got justification of why I need these funds, so let's say, for example, I've got an invoice that I need to pay, I've got a quote for airfares online, I could take a screenshot, I can upload that as a receipt or as a file here. If I haven't, once the transaction is made, I can then go back into that and provide it once I've received that tax invoice. Now, I've got a date range here as well, and this is more so for a multi-use virtual card or for the dynamically funded card. So if I was requesting a dynamically funded card for, let's say, for example, I'm traveling for a week and I need access to $1,000 for my accommodation, car rental, meals, I could put in a date range of a week. If it was longer, I can put that in, or if it was a virtual card, I can actually put in a shorter date. For the purpose of this, we're just going to say that this was a limit increase for that week. So I can go into the limit increase and I can put in how much I actually need. I can allocate, apologies, I can't even type today, and click on next. Now, what happens is this will run a code over that transaction, just as it would like we're coding a transaction in Flexipurchase today. It's going to automatically allocate no GST because we haven't actually made the purchase. And then here's where I get the option to say, am I funding a dynamic card? So is this the physical piece of plastic? And I'll have my last 4 digits appear here. Or in the next scenario with a virtual card, it would give me the option of single or multi-use depending on the actual transaction. So when I hit submit, that is going to go off to my manager for approval. And I'll show you what that looks like in a moment. In the instance where we're requesting a virtual card, it's slightly different, but the same. Again, I've got the option here to attach a file. I can put in what the request is. So let's say that we're buying a new printer. Now, I know that I'm going to make that transaction in the next 2 days, for example. So I'm just going to put a time limit. Oh, that's significantly more. So we're just going to put in 2 days. When I click on next, again, I'll get the different options here. And we're going to say, okay, this is procurement spend. And it's just home office supplies. And it's a printer. So when I click on next, again, we run the coding over the top of that. We're allocating a few different things for the virtual card at this point. The first of which you can see are merchant allowed category groups. So what that means is when we click on the particular category, we can actually restrict it right down to a merchant category group. And I think we've got around 20 different merchant groups that we can actually restrict that card to use. So it means if I'm requesting travel, these merchant groups would come up and they're the only place that I can actually use that virtual card. So again, quite powerful and very controlling in the way that we can use that card. So here you can see, based on the request that I'm putting through, I'm only given the option for a single-use virtual card. So again, I hit submit, and then that will go off to my manager to be approved. So what will happen at this point is my manager's going to get a notification. Now, they're going to get a notification either through push notification through the mobile app, or they're just going to get an email into their inbox. They'll now see that they've got 3 transactions that require approval, or 3 requests. When I go into this, I select the user, and you can see the items that I've actually put in. So the office supplies against the dynamically funded card, as well as the office printer for the virtual card, have now been approved. So I can simply, I'm about to approve them. When I click on approve selected items, we clear them out of our approval list. And again, the cardholder or the user is going to get a notification straight back the other way saying, hey, these requests have been approved. At this point, especially with the virtual card, what we've done is we're on that approval, we're sending a message to the bank, to NAB, saying, hey, this particular user needs access to a virtual card. That will then provision. So if I look at this particular virtual card request, the office printer, when I click on that, I'll then get an option if I scroll down to go and retrieve that virtual card. And then you can see what's happened is in real time, I have been provisioned with a virtual credit card. So I've got a 16-digit PAN, I've got an expiry date and a CVV attached to that. So I can now copy those details, go and drop them into any website within reason, which I'm allowed to, and process that card. Now, because it's a single-use virtual card, once that transaction has been processed, the card vanishes and can't be used again. So if, for example, I've requested a $200 virtual credit card and I've made a purchase for $170, it's only the $170 that's taken from your facility. The other 30 remains there, and then the card is inactive and can't be used again. Okay, so where can things like virtual cards be used? So when we talk about a single use or a multi-use, we're really sort of talking about different scenarios. So single-use card are things like single-use suppliers where you don't want to issue a traditional credit card number because you're never going to use them again. Multi-use is more around things like subscriptions and licenses, memberships. So we all use Microsoft. So Office 365 licenses, it may be LinkedIn, Norton Antivirus, Salesforce, all of those types of things can be used with a virtual card. Online purchases, logistics, things like that. Australia Post, we've all got to post things at some point. Officeworks, everyone needs stationery. And especially in times like this where you've got individuals that are working from home and they need to quickly have access to some new notebooks or things like that for their home office, the ability to raise a virtual card and not have to sort of go through some sort of rigorous purchase order process is paying off dividends. Things like event hire, travel. If we talk about like the education space, for example, hiring a venue such as the Sydney Opera House or a hotel whilst I'm traveling for business, all of these things, they're purchased online or over the phone. If we talk about organisations that have company vehicles, you've got Vic Roads, you've got registration, you may be in New South Wales, another state. And then things like utilities and insurances. Things like electricity, internet. Some organisations will provide health cover for their employees. So things like these, again, all relevant and can all be purchased through the use of a virtual card. So I think we've gone under time there a little bit, but what we might do at this point is I will introduce Tom Hudson, who is going to be facilitating our panel today, along with Mikhail Barons, and bring back Martin Ross. So now's the opportunity for everyone to jump in and ask any questions that you may have around this.
Thanks very much, Don, for what was a very informative presentation there. Just a reminder to everyone that's viewing from your office or from home, down the bottom there is a Q&A button. If you click on that, you're able to write your question. It can be done anonymously, but we won't be reading out any names. So any questions you're thinking about, please do send through. Thank you, Mikhail. Thank you, Martin. A question has come through, and I think this is one that I'd probably like to throw to you, Mikhail, given your expertise in the industry. And is it common to have cards being shared within offices?
Thanks, Tom. Great question. It is fairly common when we see cards being shared in organisations quite often. It's not recommended, and often in times where we see fraud, the organisation doesn't necessarily know who's used the card, where the fraud's actually come from, because it's being shared through a number of different people. The solution that Don's gone through today with virtual cards sort of takes away that sort of instance where if you're using it online, and that's where we see majority of fraud happening, you can provide a virtual card to each individual employee without having to share that card. So if something happens, rather than cancelling a card with a large limit on it, your risk is mitigated because it's a once-off virtual card or a multi-use card, and so you can cancel it directly through Flexipurchase.
Thanks for that, Mikhail. Martin, one that I think I'll throw to you as the National Head of Transactional Banking. One of our attendees today would like to know how widely used this product is amongst some of NAB's transactional banking customers.
Yeah, it's since it's been introduced, Tom, right across the country, we've had a real great interest, particularly around the virtual cards and for the subscriptions. The feedback we get from our customers is particularly in the day and age of security and fraud, and we've seen this quite significantly increase, unfortunately, the instances of fraud with COVID. That having these one-time use cards, particularly in a virtual environment, has been very popular, just to allow you to manage that risk as well. So it's one of the our key solutions that a lot of our customers are coming to us right now about.
Thanks for that, Martin. I'm going to throw this one to the tech boffin, being Don. Don, can you clarify how quickly can a user, after it's approved by their manager, get a valid credit card number for use? In my particular use case, for an online software license.
Yeah, good question. So with the demonstration that I've just done now, and you probably saw me request an amount that was under $1, that's because I'm actually requesting a live credit card. So what I showed you there in the demo is it's real time. So as soon as the approval button is clicked, then the call is made to NAB to provide that virtual credit card number, and it is that quick. So as quickly as me logging back in as the user to see that request, that virtual credit card number is available.
Thanks for that, Don. I'm going to follow up again to you with this question. How close are you at NAB to being able to add a virtual card that drops directly into my Apple Wallet? And by saying that, I'll also say Google Wallet.
Yeah, I think that question generally follows. So what we've been working quite hard to do, so we were the first bank globally to bring this product to life, so the ability to request a virtual card on a mobile device. The next portion of that is obviously requesting that virtual card and being able to drop it into the mobile wallet. So we're working heavily on that at the moment. We've sort of had a few setbacks with COVID, but the aim was to have that completed by the end of this year. We're now working to potentially the middle of next year, but yeah, great question. And we are working very hard on it.
Thanks for that, Don. Mikhail, a question I'm going to throw to you. Is KYC 100-point ID check required every time I issue a new card, Very good question there, because you don't want to be doing that if every time you're raising one for a software order.
That's it. It's a great question, Tom. With the way this Flexipurchase solution works, if you're issuing a physical piece of plastic, we do sort of go through a 100-point check, although the check that we go through is somewhat simplified in a corporate card environment. So how that works for physical cards is we will delegate a person within your organization as a security officer to conduct the 100-point check on the bank's behalf. So if one of your staff needs a new card, they can come to you. You just document and hold the 100-point information within your system, and you can log in NAB Connect and order a new physical piece of plastic, which will be issued within 7 days ordinarily. With the virtual cards, to Don's point before around being able to issue virtual cards within a wallet, what that means is we're effectively providing one facility to your organization, and subsequent virtual cards being issued are just tokens of that card. So when you saw the card being issued in that environment, you saw that it was issued to NAB ePayables Pilot. The card itself is actually issued to your organization rather than an individual. So in those instances for virtual cards, you won't need any 100-point check when issuing cards.
Thanks, Mikhail. A question I'm going to throw to you, Don, because you did speak about this as an example. If this is used to replace a petty cash tin, how does a staff member use the virtual card number, etc., if they are attending a local cafe to purchase milk? I.e., is there an app that could be used on a staff member's mobile to use this card? I think this is probably a good chance just to clarify the difference between what we would call card not present and card present transactions.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that when we talk about our ePayable solution, it sort of can be hard to differentiate what the difference between the dynamically funded card versus the virtual card is. And to your point, Tom, so in the instance where you're replacing a petty cash tin, what we would generally do is we would issue the dynamically funded card in that instance, because we are aware that generally petty cash is used for small purchases. It's a coffee down at the local coffee shop, picking up some milk and things for the office. So we would issue the physical piece of plastic with that request function to add funds to it if and when needed. And if it was sort of more office-based staff or people that aren't going out and about to purchase, and to Tom's point where he says card not present transaction, that is when we would issue the virtual facility.
Thanks, Don. While I've got you, another question for you. Could be from the marketing manager, I'm guessing. We have daily transactions with Facebook and Google AdWords. The amounts are not the same, but regular and current being billed to a credit card, which has occasionally maxed out overnight or over the weekend, causing issues for our additional ads that have been booked. How would this change with a virtual card?
Yeah, no, great question. So generally the issue that you've got there is those cards are probably being used for other things as well. So what we generally find, especially with Facebook advertising, is although the amounts are different, you've got a pretty clear understanding of what you're going to be charged. So we can request multi-use virtual cards to be specific for that use case. So rather than it's an individual's card where they're still using it throughout the week for other purchases and that's why they're hitting their limit, we'd request a specific virtual card that's just for that particular account. And we would give it a limit that we know is going to cover, let's say, a week's worth of Facebook advertising or Google AdWords. Thanks, Don.
The question for you, Mikhail, is there a mobile app that's involved with this product? Not everyone is at their desk during the 9 to 5 period, and often emergencies do come up on weekends.
That's another great question. We actually do have an app, and ordinarily, I think there were some technical issues today, but we would normally run through the specifics of how the app works. So everything you saw Don go through in the demonstration today is available via a mobile app as well.
You're exactly right, Mikhail. Unfortunately, we did have a connectivity issue trying to share my app on the screen, which is disappointing because it actually looks really cool when I bring it up as well. So,
and just to clarify, that's both for the card user and also for the approver as well.
Yeah, exactly. And look, just to the app question, the beauty of that is, and one of the use cases that we actually had an organisation use the mobile app for was, so they have a family element to their business in which the owners and so forth have cards that are incorporated, with the corporate card program. Now, what was happening is those cards were being maxed out on a Saturday evening or something like that. So the person from finance was having to take home her work computer, log in on a Saturday evening just to transfer funds across to that card. Now all they need to do is they put in a request through the Flexipurchase app. She gets that notification on her mobile device and she can hit approve, and it's done in real time. So that's another huge benefit to having that.
Thanks for that, Don. Question to you, Martin, that I'm going to throw over. This seems a pretty big leap forward and NAB must be proud, but what do you see as being next on this roadmap?
Yeah, I mean, one of our things that we're really excited about is the relationship we do have with Visa and Freedom. And by having that strategic relationship, we can really prioritize what our customers are being asking for and what we believe will help them improve their workflow, cash flow, and control. What we've traditionally seen in this space is it's been very much tailored towards the smaller end of the spend, so your travel, entertainment, incidentals. So one of the things we're also just recently launched, and we're starting to have conversations with a lot of our customers around is automated invoice payments as well. So that's more towards your mid-spend and even strategic spend. So traditionally, a lot of companies might have a policy of payments that are below $1,000 would be put on a card. Now we're seeing some customers start to think about how do they put that up to say 10,000, 50,000, 100,000, and also benefit from the supplier having a reduced merchant service fee. So both sides of both our customers and their end suppliers are actually benefiting as well. So there's that's starting to get a lot of really good interest in the market too, and one that we're very proud to bring to the market first as well. So another one to have conversation with your banker and specialist and Don at any point in time.
Thanks, Martin. Actually, just that sort of triggered a conversation I think I had with you a couple of weeks ago, where you were mentioning that when purchase orders or traditional purchase orders are raised within an organisation, it could be for a $5 mouse. But Deloitte's done some work that suggests that could cost around $75, I think was the figure.
Yeah, absolutely. And what we found is moving to that more automated process, it brings it down to around about $22. So if you think about every purchase order invoice being a differential of $50, you can work that out in your own organization around what you could be saving on time, energy, and reallocating resources. Not to mention, we're getting feedback from our customers that it's a real strong engagement tool. You can imagine not having to do a lot of the receipting manually, but doing it, as Dom says, doing it electronically via the app, anytime, anywhere.
Thanks, Martin. I think a question I'm going to throw to you, Don, and that is, what audit trail reports are available to my accounts department?
Yeah, no, good question. And look, for all of those on the call today that currently use Flexipurchase, you probably know the sort of rigorous auditing and reporting tools that we do have in place. But I mean, look, this comes with the same level of visibility in terms of reporting. So we do have specific audit trails around specific types of things, but we also have the ability to go in and individually look at what cards have been raised in the virtual card scenario, what funds have been allocated, and as quickly as we can produce or request those cards, we can cancel them as well.
Thanks, Don. A question that I'll answer myself. One of our attendees has said, when expenses are raised, does that come directly out of the company bank account? And just to clarify, no, it doesn't. It's very similar to having a credit limit that you've had approved previously with your banking relationship management team, and that's where those funds will be drawn from. But I think that also ties in nicely to another question, Don, also on the audit trail, which is, does the GL code interfaces to company, or does it interface to company financial systems for accounting transactions automatically?
Yeah, definitely. So again, this is one of our sort of modules that we have within the Flexipurchase suite called auto interfacing. So we do have the ability to set up essentially a connection between your finance system or even your HR system, if you want to use user data to come across as well, that can be auto uploaded into Flexipurchase, which takes a lot of that manual effort out of it as well.
Thanks very much, Don. A question that I'm going to throw to you, Mikhail, and certainly one that from a fraud mitigating sense, I can certainly understand why they'd be asking this. What happens when a charge is attempted against a card that is dead, closed, ended, no longer on the planet? Does the manager get an alert?
Yes, so there's an audit trail within Flexipurchase. Ordinarily, though, once the card is used, and let's say, for instance, it's a once-off virtual card, the card itself then becomes null and void. What will happen is within your transaction flow within Flexipurchase, that transaction data will show as declined if it did come through in that way.
Sorry, Martin, were you about to add something, or?
No.
All good. No, it just lit up your microphone. A really good question that I will once again throw to you, Martin, is we still have a need for traditional corporate cards that we use mainly for entertaining and travel expenses for our CEO and CFO. Are we still able to have this? Can it act as a hybrid?
Yeah, absolutely. This is an additional module onto core Flexipurchase. So, and we do have some customers that don't have core Flexipurchase and have been using this as a standalone. So it really is, you know, a good opportunity to review your current practices and say, you know, all of your spend, what do you need, whether it be at your executive level, your day-to-day procurement, and your incidentals as well. So we feel now we're really able to capture all of the different types of spend and help you really streamline all aspects of both strategic spend and also your tactical spend for all different types of employees as well. So again, that's where we encourage you to have a session with one of our specialists and Don to really uncover, you know, what your specific needs are as well. Great question.
Thanks, Martin. A question I'm going to throw to you, Mikhail, and I think one that could be coming from the financial manager of the business. We know that when we have physical cards, there's a monthly fee. How does the pricing work for the virtual card? Will I be charged a monthly fee every time I raise a card?
It's another great question, Tom. It must be from an accountant. In respect to virtual cards, and to my point earlier, because we effectively are tokenizing one individual card, it doesn't matter if you issue one virtual card or 1,000 virtual cards throughout a calendar month. The company will only be charged a single fee of $6.82, and that's for all cards issued. So it's a fairly low cost way to make your payments as well.
So in essence, you could raise $1 million in the month and you're still only going to be paying that one fee of $6.82.
Exactly right.
I won't ask you where you came up with the 82 cents, but maybe we'll take that offline. A question for you, Don. What are the sorry, excuse me, I'm just scrolling down. Can virtual cards be set up with monthly limits, which can be used multiple times during that calendar month?
Yeah, so unlike a traditional card where you do have a set limit, we can give you the ability to have a virtual card that has multiple use throughout the month. The difference is you would have to go in and re-request the card at the end of that month. We could set it for a 12-month period, but the difference with the virtual card is the limit that you apply to it is going to last for that 12-month period. It's not going to replenish at the end of each month, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, Don. And I think a question that ties in very nicely with what you've just been asked is, what is the maximum time length a virtual card can exist for?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. So again, with the multi-use card, obviously that can last for up to the period that a normal Visa card would. So I think between sort of 3 and 4 years. If it's a single-use card, obviously you're probably not going to put a 3 or 4 year period on it because you would think that the person's going to make that request a little sooner. But yeah, you do have the ability to stretch it out to that current sort of Visa standard.
Thanks for that, Don. A question I'm going to throw to you, Mikhail, and it's certainly one that I would be asking myself. But the question is, right now with my NAB business card, I get very nice allocation of Qantas frequent flyer points. I presume these points would no longer come through with this product. In essence, they're incompatible.
That would be correct, Tom. So at this point in time, the corporate card program doesn't have any points attached to it in terms of Qantas points or any reward type system. What we do say though is the value that you'll get out of this, there's efficiency benefits rather than tangible benefits that you'll get out of Qantas points as an example. And a lot of organisations in some instances will have both a Qantas card as well as a solution like this that you saw today, just because of those efficiency benefits for your day-to-day and your more regular spend.
Thanks, Michael. And I think also just noting there, I did have a discussion with a customer that predominantly was spending overseas. So with Facebook advertising being their main expense, and we were able to say to them, just remember that a business card, whether it be NAB issued or at a third-party bank, goes through at a 3% FX conversion cost, as opposed to these cards being in the corporate and purchasing space, where traditionally there's a lot more overseas spend going through. It only goes through at 1%. He was able to identify straight away there and then he'd save $80,000, and that's a lot of airfares, whether you're in economy like myself or business class like Don, that you're able to purchase just with the saving.
Spot on, Tom.
Now I've got another question that's just come through, and I think it links back to the GL discussion, Don. So I'm going to aim this at you. Does the interface to GL codes enable filtering of this list based on the user? And if so, they can't purchase to codes that are someone else's budget. So I think just a fraud mitigant there within the organisation.
Yeah, no, good question. So within Flexipurchase, we've got the ability to configure it in various different ways. And one of those ways is by using what we call charge groups. So what a charge group allows you to do is essentially insert different users into these groups along with the codes that are available to them. So me as a user today, I'm a part of charge group A, means that I only have access to codes A, B, C. If Mikhail was in charge group B, he only has access to codes D, E, F, for example. So yes, it's definitely available.
Thanks, Don. Question for you, Mikhail. Is the dynamic plastic card issued in the staff member's name specifically?
Yes, so all plastic cards will be issued to individuals, and that's where you'd have that process that I spoke about earlier, where you'd have this simplified 100-point check, which can be those cards issued through NAB Connect.
Thanks, Mikhail. A question I'm going to ask to you, Don, and one that I think is probably coming through from the person handling the marketing within the organisation. They say, I do a lot of overseas spend with the social media advertising sites. I've used virtual cards in the past and they've been rejected by Facebook. How confident are you at Visa and NAB that this product is going to work in this instance?
I can hand on heart say very confident, because in one of the use cases that we had, and that was a real use case for one of our customers, where they had 26 cards linked to a Facebook advertising account and they got hit with fraud and had to cancel all of them. They are actually now using virtual card specifically for Facebook advertising, and it works with no issues whatsoever.
Thanks very much for that, Don. Now, that's all the questions we've had so far. I'll just give everyone one last chance. If there is a question that's on your mind and you want to type it through, to pass that on. But a question, once again, I'll ask to you, Martin, is do you use one of these cards yourself?
Yeah, so one of the biggest customers I've got on this program is actually across National Australia Bank. And as a leader, a manager within NAB, it's certainly really been a great advantage for myself to be able to get visibility of all my team's spend, be able to track spend, and also be able to approve spend as well. So it's one of those things that all of our team, when we go out and speak to our customers, they've got access to the app and they can show you how that's that workflow goes, so you can actually then start to see how it would be embedded into your own business as well. So there's nothing better than actually promoting what you actually use ourselves. And as you said before, traditionally in the past at NAB, we would be ordering pens for the teams, which might cost $50, but through our internal purchase order process, it could have cost us about $200. That's certainly streamlined that down by having that policy now, we can actually make these expenditures on our cards and then workflow through Flexipurchase as well. So, and certainly, if you haven't had an opportunity to see Flexipurchase, particularly the new modules that Don just talked about in action, it's well worth reaching out to your banker and having a conversation via Zoom over the next coming weeks.
Thanks, Martin. I think that also goes back to a conversation we had a little while ago, which sort of said, from a retail point of view, the average household puts anywhere between 50 to 60% of their expenses through card. But in the business or commercial sense, that's a lot less. Is it true it's as little as 3%?
Yeah, it's about a little 3%. And that goes back to, again, the work we've been doing with Visa and Freedom around educating our customers and using seminars like today and webinars to change mindsets of how you can actually use a virtual card, particularly nowadays when a lot of teams and customers are in lockdown, doing things remotely. And you can do that in a very secure and, as we can see, a very quick way, particularly if they've got dynamic limit cards and there might be an ask for a greater expenditure to take them above that existing threshold limit. That can be workflowed very quickly to lift that limit and then enable the card holder virtually to make that expenditure as well. So we're forecasting that we'll see that 3% spend on card really dramatically increase over the coming years, particularly also as we see the decline in checks and decline in cash from a health perspective as well.
Well, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. I think I was reading the RBA believes that COVID has sped that up. What they thought would take 10 years is being done in about 6 months. So we've certainly seen that at NAB. Question, Don, that I'd like to throw over to you. Have you seen any fraud instances with this product?
No, we haven't. So I think the primary use that a lot of organisations are using this for is the single-use virtual card, which completely eliminates that. So I think that's one of the biggest positives around this is once that card number has been used, it cannot be accessed again. So that's been really promising. And yeah, we haven't seen any across the multi-use either. So
I think that's great to hear, but this probably ties in with the last question we've got for today, which is we're trying to reduce our expenses at the moment in these tough environments. How can we use a virtual card to keep a track of all the subscriptions that we've been paying for, especially as there are going to be lots of different card numbers?
Yeah, so the good thing is what we can do is, and this is the same in everyday transactions with the sort of current traditional Flexipurchase as well, is if you've got that set up to a specific general ledger account, for example, all of this is reportable through Flexipurchase, and it's really quite granular, the level that you can drill down on it. So if you've got, hypothetically speaking, 100 virtual cards set up across a whole heap of different subscriptions, you could simply go in and run a report specifically on subscriptions, and it would bring up all of those transactions and all of the cards linked to them.
Thanks for that, Don. Now, that was the last question. Just before I throw back to Martin, now I know your position is you're the National Channel Manager for Flexipurchase, but does that prohibit you from being able to have a one-on-one meeting to discuss this further?
In person at the moment it does, but no, open to meeting in a scenario like this with anyone across the country. So.
Fantastic. Don and Mikhail, thank you so much for joining. Martin, I'm going to throw it back to you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. And just really in closing, I just want to say a few thanks. First of all, thank you to Tom for mediating that Q&A session, and also Mikhail for answering that, as well as Don. But a special thanks to Don for taking us through some of the new innovation that you're bringing to us to then ultimately bring to our customers. It's a great partnership and really enjoy that, and we look forward to a long progress of new innovation that we'll be delivering to our customers as well. And lastly, I just want to thank our customers for joining us today. It's been a great turnout. And by the number of questions, it seems to have struck a chord on a number of ways around how you could potentially see improvements to workflow, cash flow, risk mitigation and control as well. So thank you for joining us on a Friday afternoon. We'll close off now and give you 5 minutes back in your day. And we wish you a good weekend, and we look forward, hopefully, seeing you for a conversation with your relationship banking team and also with Don. Thanks very much for joining us.